We have here the map set up for the beginning of Scenario 2 from Wellington's victory, which is entitled Haye Sainte and is actually d'Erlon's midday attack. Well, I say midday, but it actually starts at, I think, 1:30, which is turn 20 of the full game, and turn 18, continues up to turn 38, which is 6:30, when I assume the guard went in and the Prussians were on and all that. So this is kind of like the major chance for French victory at Waterloo, as I understand it. And it's still, for me at least, and in a way, in the rules themselves, a learning scenario. The first one was Hougoumont, which took place over here. You have Hougoumont itself just under there, and I've got a couple of the units from that on, because this delineates the edge of the board for this scenario. These ones could possibly fire upon these units as they're moving up. There's actually should be 2 more hexes on here, but what I've set up, you actually need all 4 map sheets to play this scenario, but there's only a quarter of these 2 map sheets showing, well, in fact, it's an eighth of this one, a quarter of that one, 2 panels as it were, and then a half of each of these. Oh no, sorry, and another quarter of that. So basically we've got a map edges here, and so you can imagine this one was doubled, this one it's doubled here again and doubled here, and then these ones you have 3 more panels that big. That's the whole map. So in effect, I've heard people say, oh, how come there's no 1 map battles in this game? But in effect, if you fold your maps down into the extent that the scenario provides, you do have a 1 mapper, because this is like the size of a typical magazine war game 1 mapper. The only thing, this would have been just off the edge there, and then, like I say, 2 hexes here. But this I don't think it's going to be a big deal, because really it would only allow a little bit more movement from either the Anglo-Allied cavalry or perhaps the French cavalry, so it might enable some more manoeuvring from those 2 cavalry forces. But for my purposes, this will be absolutely fine. I think, as I said, it's a kind of like, you can consider it a learning scenario. The Hougoumont scenario was solely infantry and artillery. This one now brings in cavalry. We have heavy cavalry here, so I think that's 4 regiments, 2 regiments of light cavalry here on the French side. These ones are artillery, just 3 batteries there, 3 guns each. Then on the Anglo-Allied side we have light cavalry, some more light cavalry, and then these are heavy cavalry around here. Oh, and those are also some cavalry. I don't know if they're heavy or light. But so this scenario is, apart from me learning the system more, is also bringing in the cavalry, so learning how to use the cavalry in these combined arms actions. Now, it's set up like this, it looks great. I was playing a little bit with the lighting setting, trying to get the best light to show the colours of the map. This is perhaps for you a little bit more orange than it is in reality, but it's still, you can see it's very light yellow map, but the terrain does kind of fall away underneath the counters, so it's good. It doesn't interfere with the counters. You get a very clear presentation of the lines of battle. So what do the lines of battle contain? Well, effectively you've got on the you've got a whole of the 1st Corps here, infantry, 2 brigades, so 1 division of the 2nd Corps here, and you've got their gathered artillery set up here. They set up within 5 hexes of this point. That's just my own marker. And then, like I said, some cavalry here. So that's 16,000 infantry on the French side, 7,200 cavalry, and 48 guns and large batteries. Then there's 3 batteries of horse artillery there, and then those batteries there. There's also 1 battery just parked there amidst second corps units. So that's what's on the French side, those 16,000 infantry, 7,000 cavalry. You've got more infantry, in fact, on Wellington's side, including some back here in reserve. I'm not sure, I didn't count out the artillery. I expect the French have got a bit more. But they've also got a comparative amount of cavalry on board as well. But what do we have? Well, if we look at the French, if you've seen one of the previous, you might know, but they average 5 strength points, 4 effectiveness, and then the last numbers there, movement 4. Well, on the Anglo-Allied side, you have a bit of a mixture. Oh, we're losing some light here. Anyway, so you've got these Dutch, or I should say Netherlands units, some skirmish units here. These are actually battalions here, and they're in villages, so they're disordered for that. So they have 8 strength. Some detached as skirmishers, 5 morale, so that's quite good. But then over here you have Hanoverian units. Look, you can see 2 or 3. Sorry, the effectiveness rating, the middle one, is also effectively morale. So their effectiveness rating and morale is not that great. So they will flee quite quickly, and they're not so great at firing and so forth. You've got some more Dutch units here. Some of them are low morale, 2-2. Yes, Dutch, I say Netherlands. Then you've got some English line there. English line here and here, and some more Hanoverian weaker troops there. Then the English cavalry in reserve, Wellington himself there. And then a small brigade there, and some artillery in reserve. Now, interesting points in this situation are, you can't see it probably, but this is Mercer's horse artillery. Now, this gentleman, he wrote an account of the campaign afterwards, and in effect it's like a travel log stroke battle description. So on the one hand, him being like an English cavalry officer, he's in the horse artillery, he's quite a cultured gentleman, and so every time his men are billeted and they set up, as an officer, he gets generally the best spot, be it in a town or a farm or something like that, and then he travels off to sort of check out the countryside, the sites, to visit the local dignitaries and so forth. So he has wonderful descriptions of the furniture, the architecture, the scenery and stuff like that. And then part way through that, the Battle of Waterloo happens, and he's also at Quatre Bras, I believe, yes. And so then you have first-hand accounts. He's right in the thick of it. So at the moment he's not, but I've placed Wellington so that he's within Wellington's command range. He can be moved quite quickly, and he's probably going to be needed quite quickly. So that's wonderful to have that. There's another thing, is that that's the setup, but what we don't have is these are all command staff. So each of these is named with a commander, and maybe some of these are a bit more familiar. Got Picton, Vivian, Ponsonby and so forth. Here's the French ones. So there's lots of command units to come on. Now some of the Anglo-Allied ones have been deployed, which means they start with the 3 brigades committed. That's one here with Kempf, Ompeter with his King's German Legion, and then we have these Netherlands ones here. So those will start the game committed. French actually don't, although they're going to be attacking, they haven't committed anyone yet. The only commander on board at the beginning is Ney himself, and he has to set up on a unit, and I've set him up so that he can activate 3. Oh, he has to set up on one of the units of this brigade. So the scenario is kind of set up that he can activate these 3 divisions. When this is my second try at this scenario. The first try, I'll just show you a quick look here. This is my committed units and losses and so forth. So I finished after 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I was in the 6th turn, which was actually, we had quite significant. I sent these ones up, so I'd made a mistake, and Nay was over here. I didn't activate these. These ones went up, and they actually broke through. Because this artillery bombardment against them was quite effective. I did make some rules mistakes as well, and we had our French cavalry going through here, then the British cavalry responding. It was getting quite interesting, but I thought I'd backtrack and start again with some corrections to my mistakes, so I get a better play of how it plays. But anyway, all that was vis-a-vis the fact that so the scenario sets up Nay there effectively so that you can activate these at the start, so that this will be the first move up the centre towards Haye Sainte, which is here. Far most south is that hex. Here's the sand pit with British sharpshooters, and we've got King's German Legion detachments there. So you're going to start like that, which is actually, you're against the strongest point. I made the sensible decision, of course, Nay himself at the time wasn't to know that, to move against the weaker point. So that can't happen right at the beginning. So effectively this attack's going to go in echelon, these first and then these. And I think I'm going to make this, my plan is that the front brigades here, so each division has 2 brigades, one in front of the other. I'm going to send in the front 2 brigades of here as sort of spoiling attacks, and then I'll be sending in, and I haven't decided if I send in the whole division here, but these 2 divisions will go in as divisions, so they will separate a bit, so that you can have one wave and then the second to exploit the gap, and then of course the cavalry will be sent in once that gap has been created, which we're fairly confident can happen, as it did the last game, although, as I said, this one, I made a couple of mistakes, so this one will play out somewhat differently. Now it's interesting because we have these Netherlands units on the flank, but the problem is they have command problems. So, for example, Wellington has a command range of 8, so that means he can commit any brigade within 8 hexes of him, and he can also command artillery subordinate to him, and of course they're all subordinate to him within 8, to move them off. Now, for example, the Netherlands, he's got the onboard commander. I've actually got the Prince Orange there, that's a mistake. He should be off at the moment, but he will come on as soon as I can and move over here to assist in the command of this. He's only got a range of 2. So, for example, he could have been there and they would both have been within range, which might have been sensible, but he's here to but then the guns here would have been inactive, and the point is that that those guns, the idea is to move them up to be more supportive of these, so that the line can sort of form here, because we're confident with that cavalry not running up here. We've got our own cavalry covering on the Anglo-Allied side. So command issues, you see, he can't, it's very difficult for all of these to be moved. They're scattered. He's only got command range of 2. So these ones will be able to move up relatively unmolested. They're not going to suddenly fall upon the flank. So sort of a bit of an artillery bombardment here to hopefully rout some of these, or at least weaken them up. Meanwhile, these move up to kind of like a spoiling attack, maybe take Haye Sainte if possible. And then at least 2, maybe 3 of these divisions move up en masse to break through there, and then the cavalry following. Ney will have a little bit running around too, because he's only got 4 command range, half of Wellington's, and so he's going to have to run out to pick these up, or activate another commander to send out to pick those up. So we can have a bit of a command chain, because Ney's the army commander, Wellington's the other army commander. Then you could bring on a corps commander, and so you can have a chain from the army commander to the corps commander, then through him to the corps commander to the actual brigade commander. That's just for commitment, and also the corps commanders could command move their artillery. But once your unit has committed, you need your leader to be within range of your leader to move. So most of the brigade leaders only have two, in fact all of them I think only have 2 hexes range, so you can see they have to stay in the middle of them to move them all en masse. Then you're going to need at some point you're going to need your division leader somewhere behind, maybe even the corps leader somewhere behind, to pick up the routing units. Otherwise your brigade leader will come back and will leave the other units out of command. So command issues in this game. I kept forgetting about the command ranges in the last try of this, so it would be interesting to do that correctly. Yeah, so that's the plan. The Anglo-Allied plan is, it is defensive, so it will be more in response to what the French do. But probably these will get activated quite quickly if they become under fire. And they will activate themselves, commit themselves. They need to move back because they're right on the edge there within firing line, and perhaps some movement from here. Then eventually the main command decision will be when to commit the cavalry. As we know in this system, you don't want to commit units too early because it costs you morale points. And so every unit lost is a morale point on the hour. Every unit committed, that's every brigade committed, rather than unit. Every brigade committed costs morale points. And the loser of this scenario is the one whose morale reaches 0 first. Okay, so that's my plan. I think this scenario is going to give quite, as I'm getting into the system more and understanding it more, it will give quite a good flavour of the system, because apart from the tactical manoeuvrings, it is very much about command decision. So when to release your brigades, the temptation will just be to release these all at once, and that might not be a bad temptation because the morale counts at start are high for the armies in this scenario. The French might be able to release them all and cause enough casualties to compensate, to make them lose more in that effect. But on the other hand, you can't be too unconservative. So there's that consideration of the morale attrition, as it were, as committed units are sweating buckets, and the longer they stay on. And then the other command point is the command spans of the leaders, like where to place your leaders to rally. For example, like I said, if you've got a commander on this front brigade here and they're moving up, any other commander can command a unit by being in its hex. So you will find that although you've got lots of I say commanders, but they're actually considered command staff. There are lots of them, but they will be needed. I mean, these are all the cavalry ones. You can imagine the cavalry. Each 2 of these has its own commander, and they're going to need them because they need that manoeuvrability. But I think I'm going to see that flow between units are released, they're fresh, they move up, and then you start having casualties, then you start having routes, then units move back, then other units are out of command, everything starts faltering. So the question is, do you keep your leaders up front, keep pushing through? Do you bring them back, rally the men, and then meanwhile your advance is at a standstill? So this game, interestingly, I can find no errata for it on Grognard, etc., or Constant World and Board Game Geek, and the rules do seem very good themselves, but there are a couple of odd points. Like there is obviously an errata in starting hex, because it says this should be deployed on map D, which would be off over here, way back there. That's obviously a mistake, but there's another strange thing, is that you start in the middle of the turn with the mutual artillery phase. So we're going to start with artillery bombardment, and then it says the French can have a double march, a double movement phase, which will come. Their march phase does come after the artillery phase, but normally you cannot move units when they are committed. So I have seen a question about that on Board Game Geek, and I don't know that it's a mistake, but I think it needs a clarification, because the way I'm taking it is effectively you just move them a double move. They're not actually committed. And I did a little try out of a couple of turns before I put everything back to present this video, and I think that it works like that. The only thing is that Nay has to, it says infantry units, so these artillery and cavalry and so forth don't move. So effectively what that does is it puts all your infantry up to this, more or less this line. These ones get to move a bit further. So you start with an artillery bombardment, then the French infantry will all be here. And then the next turn will start, and that will start with the Anglo-Allied command control. So then Wellington will probably bring on some more commanders, maybe release another brigade or two, and then there'll be some movement. So these fellows will get, after initial bombardment, they will get a chance to move back. Then we'll go to another mutual bombardment phase. Oh no, sorry, at the top of the turn is the French command. So after the French have done their double move up to here, then we go to the next turn, and then we will see who Ney actually commits. So I believe it's as written. It just needs a clarification that it's kind of like a special movement of uncommitted units, which is a bit odd given the rules. And you ask, why didn't you just set them up there? But I suppose the point is that it gives you a bit of a chance to manoeuvre, so you can decide whether this division goes on this side of Brussels Road, moves towards that side, or straight up the road. And for example, I sent some of these up here in my tryout and some here. If they were all set up there, they wouldn't, they'd have to start backtracking, which wouldn't make sense. So I think that's what it's about, and that's where I'm going to be taking it. So I'll stop this film here, and I'll take another one at the end of, I think, the second turn, just to show you the results of that initial bombardment and initial reactions to what's happening.